Hey everyone, and welcome to Tony He for Ho. I mean Tony for you. Everyone loves the cute mascots of SMT, the Jack Bros. Fan favorite Jack Frost, his best friend Pyro Jack or Jack-o'-lantern, and the lesser loved Jack Ripper. They seem like just any other mascots to the average onlooker, but there's much more to these little guys than meets the eye. From the personification of winter, a person who deceived the devil himself, and the terror of England still talked about today. We'll be going into the folklore of each of the Jack Bros, and not so much into the variations like Frost Ace, Black Frost, and King Frost, just to keep things concise. Let's start this folklore triple feature. This video was made possible by the great people over at my Patreon. If you'd like to support, check the link in the description below. Also, I have a Discord, so if you want to come and chat with me and other wannabe theologists, come join and hang out. Jack Frost, the friendly spirit commanding the freezing winds. In times long past, there were many gods and otherworldly entities closely tied with the seasons, winter being the most diverse. From Boreas in Greek myth being the god of the north wind, Morana the Slavic goddess of winter's death and rebirth, and Kalek, Celtic divine hag of winter. Even Norse mythological beings like the Jotun of Frost have similar stories of bringing about the cold bite of winter. These figures were of immense spiritual and religious importance to those inhabiting the region, and had festivals, rituals, and plenty of folklore stories. As time went on, however, the proliferation of Christianity met with these old beliefs and they lost their sacred meaning to the people. Despite this, the deities are still carried on as spirits and sprites with their own suite of folklore and traditions. These once great figures in contemporary religion were transitioned into characters like Old Man Winter and our very own Jack Frost. The origins of Jack Frost exactly are unknown, but we can piece together parts of his etymology and history from folklore across the world. Many interpret Jack Frost to come from Norse myth, as in the Prose Edda, written by Icelandic poet Snorri Sturluson, it speaks of ice giants named Jökull and Frosti. Their names mean icicle and frost respectively. Also for Norse myth, many believe Jökull Frosti was the name of the Norse god of wind Kari's son. He was a nymph-like being who painted frosty patterns on windows and leaves during the cold winter nights. With the two names combined, Jack Frost, or Icicle Frost in this case, can be understood as the personification of winter's bite on nature and man's creations. From this, the legend spread to other northern European countries like Finland, where he transformed into Frostman, who controls the weather and in some cases had sacrifices made to appease the entity and ensure good conditions for the livelihood of the indigenous reindeer. The earliest known instance of Jack Frost being used is an English pamphlet written by an unknown author called Round About Our Coal Fire, or Christmas Entertainments in 1734. The pamphlet was filled with folklore tales of apparitions, hobgoblins, and giants. In the prologue it says, "This time of year, being cold and frosty generally speaking, or when Jack Frost commonly takes us by the nose." Transitioning from primordial god of cold and wind to playful sprite drawing beautiful patterns on glass windows and painting the leaves is a big jump. Over hundreds of years of becoming less superstitious and a higher understanding of meteorology as a whole made the extreme seasons much less of a threat. In ancient times, an especially cold winter could completely decimate a person or family's livelihood, so personifying it as a harsh, unfeeling god of ice and wind to be feared makes sense. As time progressed, however, wintertime became something many look forward to, with ice skating, snowmen, and the holidays. In Shin megami tensei, Jack Frost is a cute little snowman wearing a blue hat, boots, and scarf poncho-like thing. Jack Frost is a neutral demon with a lighthearted attitude, but clear intent on killing you. Why? Even he doesn't know, as in this quote from Devil Survivor 2, Jack says, "I'm going to kill you." Why? No reason. Life is not fair. Just like winter, if not prepared, it can easily lead to your death, but with proper knowledge and tools, can be controlled and even used for good. The cute design reminiscent of an innocent snowman juxtaposed with the attitude of wanting to kill you but not knowing why perfectly evokes the old belief of winter being a season of death and rebirth. Simply a force of nature. More than meets the eye for sure. Pyro Jack, or Jack-o'-lantern depending on the translation. Everyone has seen a jack-o'-lantern before, if not carved one yourself. The practice dates back to the 19th century to fend off evil spirits on All Hallows Eve, from carving root vegetables like turnips, but was later transitioned to pumpkins to coincide with the harvest season of North America. The holiday itself's origins can be traced back to Samhain, a Gaelic holiday where great feasts took place on the evening of October 31st. While they were feasting, they would open the ancient burial mounds, which were seen as portals to the spirit world. Not much is known for sure about the holiday's purpose, but many believe that it was a time where the barrier between the mortal and spirit world were most thin, and instead of warding them off, They would appease them with gifts of food and drink to ensure their family and livestock would survive the next winter. The souls of deceased family members could also visit their old home and were even given a plate at the table. In more modern times, Irish and Scottish children would dress up and travel door to door in their community and recite verses in exchange for food. This practice was called mumming and guising and was later popularized as trick-or-treating. As time went on and pagan beliefs started to become little more than superstitions, carved turnips and pumpkins were used to either represent supernatural beings or to ward off evil spirits. As for why it was a root vegetable, or why it's specifically called the jack-o'-lantern, we can learn that from the tale of Stingy Jack. The story goes as follows. Several centuries ago, in Ireland, there lived a drunkard known as Stingy Jack. Jack was a deceiver and manipulator, to such a degree that the devil himself took notice of his ways. The devil traveled from hell to Ireland to simply see if Jack was really as bad as the stories say. The devil found Jack, and even though he was drunk, he knew not only his life, but his very soul was in danger. Jack pleaded with the devil to grant him one last request, to drink some ale before going back to where the devil calls home. His wish was granted, and Jack drank his fill at the local tavern, and unsurprisingly, Jack didn't have any money. Jack suggested the devil transform into a silver coin, and when the bartender wasn't looking, come meet him outside. When the devil transformed, Jack snatched the coin and put it in his pouch, which held the crucifix. His quick thinking led to the devil having no other choice than to listen to Jack's demands, which were to leave him and his soul alone for 10 years. Instead of getting on the right path, Jack continued to live a life of sin, and before he knew it, 10 years had already passed and the devil came to collect. Jack, seemingly resigned to his fate, only requested the devil to allow him one last apple before his trip to hell. When the devil climbed the nearest apple tree, Jack quickly surrounded it with crucifixes and once again found the devil at his mercy. This time, Jack thought of a more permanent solution, that the devil would never take his soul, and seeing no other option, the devil agreed. When the time finally came for Stingy Jack to expire, he visited the gates of heaven, and was denied entry by St. Peter for his sinful lifestyle and disregard for God's teachings. Seeing no other choice, Jack visited hell and begged for entry to some sort of afterlife. The devil is true to his word though, and swears to never take his soul. The devil gives Jack a small ember from hell's fires to light his way and sends him off. Stingy Jack forevermore is doomed to wander the earth with only an ember inside a hollowed-out turnip, barred from the plains of good and evil. That is the history of jack-o'-lanterns. And knowing all this, Pyro Jack makes a lot more sense in SMT. The pumpkin-headed cloaked figure carrying an ember with the power to immolate people perfectly fits the Stingy Jack of legend. Pyro Jack is pure neutral, as he is barred entry to any other planes, and while not extremely dangerous, Stingy Jack is quite the trickster. If you see a wandering flame in the middle of the night, beware. In the afterlife, Stingy Jack may take more than a few coins. Jack Ripper, the terror of London. Unlike the other Jack Bros, you'd be hard-pressed to find someone that doesn't know the history of Jack the Ripper. His heinous acts are known throughout the world, even over 100 years later. In 1888, there was an unidentified serial killer active in the impoverished areas in the Whitechapel district of London, known as the Whitechapel Murderer, Leather Apron, and most famously, Jack the Ripper. One after another, destitute women were attacked in the East End, which makes numbering the exact amount of murders Jack committed very difficult. The modus operandi and the manner in which the victims were killed throughout the years have varied, so many were attributed to the East End gang violence, which was not uncommon for the poverty-stricken region. Canonically, 5 deaths were attributed to the unknown assailant, but there may have been many more. This segment will be sparse on visual aids, as I don't want to show the photographs of the victims. This will also be a content warning to skip to the end, as despite being a cute mascot in SMT, Jack the Ripper's story is anything but cute. The sheer brutality of the murders make even looking at the pictures a nauseating experience. Viewer discretion is advised. Further research only for the strong of heart. The 5 victims are Mary Ann Nichols, Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, Catherine Eddowes, and Mary Jane Kelly. In every case, the crime took place in the dead of night and around the weekend. With each victim, the severity of the mutilations grew. The first victim had her throat slashed with 2 deep cuts, one of which was so deep it hit her vertebrae, and her lower abdomen was partly ripped open with a jagged wound. It started horrible but somehow got worse, as with the 5th victim, what was left of her body was found on a bed where she lived. Once again, her throat was slashed down to the spine, and this time almost all of her organs were removed and placed neatly below her head and by her feet. Once again, I feel the need to say, please do not look up any pictures of the crimes if you value your sanity. The horrifying nature of the murders led a manhunt to ensue as the public was getting restless. Building a criminal profile at that time was already difficult, but much doubt was placed on each individual murder as to whether or not it was even done by the same perpetrator. As stated before, many attacks and murders took place around that area, so they were forced to spread themselves quite thin. After narrowing down at least 5 were done by one killer, they believed him to be a butcher, slaughterer, surgeon, or physician. Residents with those occupations were the primary suspects due to the mutilation of the victims. Others strongly believed Jack the Ripper to be a man with no clinical knowledge, but a man suffering from periodical attacks of homicidal and erotic mania. There is no evidence that Jack engaged in sexual activity with any of the women, but some say the stabbing and leaving them on display in the manner he did could possibly have given some sick gratification. To this day, Jack the Ripper's identity is unknown, and his legend lives on. A grisly reminder of how terrifying a man's true nature, behind the everyday mask, can truly be. And we might never know. In SMT, however, he is a tiny man wearing all black clothes and white gloves, running around arms raised with a straight razor and strange zombie-like skin with pure white eyes. Considering the fact we don't have any idea who Jack the Ripper really is, this design is interesting. It is important to note he holds the razor in his right hand, as that was the only thing they narrowed down in the investigation. With the victims' throats being slashed left to right, Jack must have been right-handed, though I doubt he could even reach the victim's throat at that height. I can definitely see why this is the only Jack Bro that didn't get a 3D model. His backstory is a bit much to be a mascot. That covers all the Jack Bros. There was a lot more to write about with these little guys than I was expecting, and it was really interesting. Let me know your favorite Jack Bro in the comments section down below. My favorite has to be Pyro Jack, as his story in Irish folklore was just so surprising to me, finding out the real reason they're called jack-o'-lanterns. Jack Frost and Pyro Jack are some of the best mascots Atlus could have picked. Special thanks to AutoShift, Frankie Stoned, John, Mr. 8 Eyes, Rex Zakel, Video Gamer 75, and many more for supporting the channel on Patreon. If you'd like to support, check the link in the description below. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next Tony for You. Have a good one.